I would just ask both of you, start with the assumption that many people in this audience don't know a whole lot about NASCAR, myself included, even as an American. Tell us a little bit about the story of how Ethanol first got involved in NASCAR, and then I want to hear a bit more about some of the other efforts you're doing in the green area as well. So Mike, why don't you start us off and tell us the story?
I'm glad to do that, and really pleased to be here with Ruth from HP. HP is an official partner in NASCAR and is a great example of the kind of deep, substantive collaboration, actually, and we'll share some of our brainstorming that we're doing together currently with you. NASCAR, as you mentioned, is a very visible sport in the U.S. and globally. Just to give a sense of scale, brief sense of scale and scope, and then a brief introduction to how in the world we came to a platform like NASCAR Green and what we've been doing with it for the past 5 years. I'll try to cover that in just a couple of minutes. So just to give you a sense of scale and scope, being here on the other side of the world, just to put it in perspective, I mean, NASCAR has a popularity and a visibility on a level very comparable to Formula One in Europe and Asia. It is the #2 sport in the U.S. on television behind the National Football League, and it is bigger on television than the combination of Major League Baseball, the NBA, and the National Hockey League. 17 of the 20 largest live spectator sporting events that happen in the United States every year are our races. Our drivers and owners and personalities in the sport. One of the things also as a product experience that's important to remember, because it gets a little bit to what we've accomplished here, is that our sport is about the people in it. It's about the racing and the competition and the intensity of that, but the personalities as well are a key part. So a little bit about NASCAR Green and then how we dovetail that to HP a little bit. NASCAR Green was kicked off 5 years ago when I came on board to start it up. It was based on an insight of Brian France with a little bit of input from some other folks like former Vice President, Nobel laureate Al Gore, and also General Wesley Clark, who was here yesterday, that NASCAR could offer a unique value as a visibility and demonstration platform to show that green technologies and solutions actually work, that they can be high performance, and that they can be smart business. And that was the logic of NASCAR Green from the start. And really what we did was we set out to understand what our environmental impact is in the areas of waste emissions and power, and then specifically to fuel. We actually consume a pretty small amount of fuel relative to the U.S. fuel system. The U.S. fuel system is about 135 billion gallons of transport fuel a year these days. We consume about 450,000 gallons year in, year out, running all of our racing, and then 15% of that is biofuel now. Now, 3 years ago, we kicked off our American Ethanol platform with, as you saw Brian France say, around the Sunoco Green E15 race fuel. That's 15% American-grown, American-made ethanol, and long and short, it increased horsepower by about 12, as the General mentioned yesterday. No mileage impact whatsoever. And as Dale Earnhardt Jr. said at the press conference for the 2011 Daytona 500 when he won the pole, it was a seamless transition and all good, and good enough for us, so maybe good enough for you. And then this past weekend in Phoenix, we surpassed 5 million competition miles on Sunoco Green E15 without the slightest hitch. It's still getting that horsepower. Now, in these 5 years, we've essentially put in place the biggest initiatives in sports worldwide in these environmental impact areas of waste emissions and power. By far the biggest and most diverse recycling program in sports, or really any entertainment property in the world. The biofuels program with American Ethanol and Sunoco and American Ethanol, really, the organizations behind that, Growth Energy, and which the General is co-chair of, National Corn Growers Association, a few other key value chain players in that, like Novozymes and New Holland, that essentially it has become something that we're just incredibly proud of. And what we've found in the real impact here is, in addition to actually doing the initiatives and being able to measure their results, is our impact on our fans. Now, keeping in mind, we're a really big sport. We have 100 million unique viewers based on Nielsen annually, and our avid fan base is in the double-digit millions. And this is where HP comes in. One of the genesis of our relationship with HP and working together has been around tracking fans, tracking their thoughts, their aspirations, and their opinions. Just a couple of data points for you guys in terms of results there. So 75% of avid fans of NASCAR are aware of NASCAR Green and believe the sport cares about the environment. Today, NASCAR fans are twice as likely as non-fans to view their household as very green and always looking for ways to positively impact the environment. That's up from 70% more likely last year and par when we baselined it 5 years ago. So what we're finding is that our fans, in a time when the US moved in a green direction in a very strong way, have moved twice as far. And specifically to biofuels, and this is the thing where acceptance and cutting through sort of doubt and anxiety is something that a platform like NASCAR can do and has done, just to share with you. So NASCAR fans are 50% more likely than non-fans to be accepting of higher blends of ethanol in their street cars, 70% more likely to be accepting of ethanol blends in our race cars, 40% more likely than non-fans to accept the fact that biofuels are positive for national energy security. So that kind of very close tracking of fans is really important to us, and HP is a huge enabler in that. And then what we're brainstorming on now is that one big part of our operations are our footprints in broadcast compound and in the garage area at these big events. We have the biggest broadcast compound in sports. It's bigger than the Super Bowl, it's bigger than the Olympics, and we're out there 38 weeks a year, as you mentioned. And we're doing a lot of concept development now with HP around smart management of that energy usage in a way that will enhance what we're already doing in that. Because the thing is, we're like a transportable military command compound in those areas, in broadcast and in the garage. We bring in all the power, 3 megawatts of genset power at minimum. And we need to build on our use of biodiesel to make it bigger, and we're working on that, integrating fuel cells, and then smartly manage the whole thing to optimize its efficiency, and that's where we're brainstorming now.
Great, Mike. I want to come back with one thing just for a point of clarification for everybody, because I think we know a lot about U.S. biofuels, but the audience may not. So you mentioned one thing, which is that the NASCAR fans are 50% more likely to be accepting of higher blended biofuels. In the U.S., just to clarify, a standard gallon of gasoline has 10% ethanol in it now. And there is discussion and some controversy about raising that and trying to move beyond that. We actually have legislation, a law that mandates that we move beyond 10%, but there's another law known as the blend wall, which has had some conflict. And so this is why this issue of consumers being supportive of moving beyond 10% is so important to the ethanol industry, and why that's an important influential side. I just wanted to make that clarification before we moved on. But Ruth, tell us a little bit. So now it's an interesting little ecosystem we've got here. So we've got a world in which we're using a great deal of transport fuel, but now you can tell us a little bit about the world in which we're generating a lot of electricity. 3 megawatts is a lot of juice, on-site power. First of all, what's all that power being actually used for on-site?
So it turns out that for almost anything that we do today, we use IT systems, and IT systems of today are huge guzzlers of electricity and thereby fuel, right? So you can even rank the use of IT fuel, IT energy versus world economy. It turns out to be the 5th largest fuel economy in the world. So you could actually power the UK with about half the amount of fuel it takes to power the public cloud today.
So the public cloud, we're talking about all those things when I back up my iPhone or whatever it is, all that data that's being held someplace out there.
That's right, and all the internet, all that stuff. So this is a huge mission for HP. It's clear to us that the current way we run IT systems is not sustainable for the future, as data is growing even larger with all the fans and who are tweeting and collecting videos and so forth. And this work is already underway. It has started in HP Labs quite some time ago, and if you're paying attention to HP server and infrastructure offerings, you already would have probably seen the Moonshot server, which is something that we've been using to run our own HP.com, where you can go and buy your HP PCs and printers and so forth. And we have quite a few customers And we found that by moving to this low energy, really disruptive architecture for servers, we are saving 77% of energy. Sorry, 89% energy, 77% of cost. So if only about 10 websites move to this architecture, they would be saving about 3 million kilohertz of energy a day. So, and we have in HP labs a number of additional technologies that are lined up to do even more. For example, photonics, whereas today we're using copper wiring in the data center. If and when we move to photonics, we can probably get a reduction of 16,000 times the energy use.
Sorry, photonics are what?
Photonics are networking elements, so wires to connect different devices. We already use them for our wide area networks, everybody, and for our local area networks. We're talking about photonics in the data center and photonics in the server to really push the energy use down. Non-volatile memory also actually enables you to do the same function that RAM enables you to do using absolutely no energy in the future. So we've got a bunch of these technologies lined up, and this is where the partnership is going. So now, after we support all this infrastructure, the next thing that Mike raised is how do we get value from the data? And with Nascar, I think we've been able to do that in a really phenomenal way. To provide information, real-time information during a race, during an event, really, because the NASCAR events are more than just a race. It's a huge happening. And by using our autonomy, the capabilities around autonomy to aggregate the data, both data from tweets that the fans are generating during the event, and media, other journals and reports, videos, older information that's been used in journalism, and to really present that data in a useful way for those decision makers who are running the event, right? They're running the television spots, and they're running even some of the things that are happening on the track. Right, and you know, we have some video on this that unfortunately we can't share, which really brings it to life. It's very hard to talk about visualization.
Ruth, in terms of the race, I think we're all very interested hearing from you about all the data usage, and also from Mike. Mike, if I can just play devil's advocate for a moment. NASCAR, and correct me if I'm wrong, has always been seen as quite a patriotic sport to follow in the United States. I'm just wondering, if the ethanol were not made in America, and if there were no boost to the power or the performance of the car, would you still be doing it? In other words, is the environmental benefit just an added bonus rather than the main reason for doing this?
That's a great question because it's interesting to think about it in chronology. The original thought around integrating a biofuel blend literally, viscerally, into the guts of the car and make it truly part of the competition was purely environmentally focused. It was, and it was because our observation was that the ethanol industry at that point in time, keeping in mind we kicked off NASCAR Green in the fall of '08, so that was just at the point where the ethanol industry was switching over from coal to natural gas in processing, which then led to and corn ethanol being classified as a renewable fuel in the RFS2, which actually that happened during our due diligence and was a big deal to us because it really sort of placed American ethanol squarely into the category of being something that was, unquestionably green. So, but then what happened? It's funny what happens on the way to the racetrack sometimes. Is thinking about it from the perspective of the fan and how to reach and engage and dialogue with the fan most effectively. It ended up sliding down, I guess you could say, to a third priority in a way, but still very important. And then what that did for us in development of the platform across all 25 of the NASCAR Green partners that we have and the way we integrate their technologies, it became clear to us that it was a whole new world of green that emerged from the mind of NASCAR Nation, which is high performance green, uncompromising green that also had a national pride element to it that is really potent. I mean, one of the things that we learned along the way, again, in our fan engagement, in our fan surveys, national energy security is one of the most strongly resonated to and responded to points that our fan base has ever been surveyed on. It is truly key to NASCAR Nation. And then that allowed us to get a little bit further under the covers of, why is that thought process there? And, you've basically got, a very large group of people, tens of millions of people who actually get some of the things that intuitively this conference is focusing on and have for a while. So we started with one priority, which was green, and then along the way, it became more of a mosaic.
So if they were using Brazilian ethanol, I mean, the fans might not like that.
It would, yeah. I mean, it would stand to reason, right? That it's got the relevance of all of the green technologies and solutions that we have in NASCAR, whether it's what Safety Clean does in automotive fluid recycling, what Coca-Cola recycling does in bottles and cans, what UPS does in environmental reforestation, et cetera, et cetera. That happening in the U.S. for our fans brings it home to the key message points of our platform, which is conservation of the environment. So that's global. That's not just in one country. Job creation in the green economy, and national energy independence. And where you're saving fuel and being more efficient and being smarter, you're accomplishing all three of those things, but it has to benefit the country, which certainly, Israel, based on everything that we've been learning, over the past couple of days, it's sort of an extreme sort of case study in that very issue. And I can tell you, we've experienced where Israel is going and aims to go in a very real way with our fan base and in our sport already.
But Mike, I wonder if I could just follow up on this really interesting point, Ethan, if you'll forgive me for jumping in. I'm curious about what NASCAR may have done to leverage what you just said about all of those touch points and those influential points with your fans to get them to take action as opposed to just admire your action. Because, as you said, 450,000 gallons a year, 15% of those gallons, it's not nothing, but a 1% fuel economy improvement by your 10 million fans in the cars and trucks that they drive would far outweigh that in terms of environmental benefits. So are you messaging this in a way or doing anything else to help them get into a Prius or a Chevy Volt or think about their fuel economy or advocate for getting through that ethanol wall that Ethan mentioned?
Absolutely, and this gets to very integrated fan engagement when you're talking about massive numbers of people that we message to. So we have that very tight messaging platform, and the other thing that NASCAR has, and this is what makes it different than other sports leagues by product, but basically product configuration in the mindset of the fan. Look, I grew up in New York. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a Jets fan. I don't talk about being a baseball fan or a football fan. The Giants are playing. Anybody here is a Giants fan? New York Giants? I don't care. But if the Jets are playing, I'm watching. NASCAR fans are NASCAR fans. And the average number of favorite drivers that our fans have, based on our fan tracking, is 6. So our sport speaks as a chorus as opposed to a solo voice. So probably among the very most potent things that's happened in this American ethanol platform, for example, and is also happening, Eaton Corporation is our official EV infrastructure partner of NASCAR Green, signed just this year. Incredibly proud to be in partnership with them. They're truly going to be one of the leaders in rolling out of EV infrastructure. Chevy Volts, I drive one as a promotional vehicle. I love that car. Put it up against any sports car I've ever driven. We really live this, but when you have a range of personalities in the sport, whether it's Brian France, Mike Helton, our president, Lisa Kennedy, the CEO of International Speedway Corp., any of our track presidents, and then drivers ranging from Dale Earnhardt Jr. saying we had a seamless transition to American ethanol, Jeff Gordon saying he thinks NASCAR Green is cool, and it's something that will help folks focus more on it. And you saw some of the drivers that are up there. We've got Greg Biffle, driver of the 3M number 16 car, in our 30-second TV spot running every weekend in front of 10 million viewers for 38 weeks. So that panoply of voices that's speaking as a chorus in their own words, yet along the same themes, I think that's probably where most of the real result is.
But are you measuring that? I mean, again, you've got somebody here who's measuring the results of all of your marketing. Are you finding out if that's actually resonating and if people actually are looking for more fuel-efficient cars as a result, or advocating for more ethanol in the blends and that sort of thing? Do you know if what you're doing is having an effect?
Yeah, well, just in the interest of time, the data points that I mentioned earlier, kind of in a little bit of a litany and a list, those are the kinds of impacts that literally when we kicked off this platform 5 years ago, if we would have been arrogant enough to say that we think that our fans would be twice as likely as non-fans to view their household as very green and always looking for ways to positively impact the environment, and these numbers, particularly in ethanol, which has so much sort of dissonance and flash to it from time to time, if I would have said 5 years ago, I think we can get there in 5 years, that would have been crazy hubris, frankly. But what we have now is we have this very fertile platform where we can go to that next level of detail with HP and our other partners to really get to very specifically around slice categories. And then also the other thing that's going on with us is we've heavily evolved from an R&D standpoint now with very deep thought around new platforms. So, the idea of NASCAR racing a plug-in vehicle a few years ago would have been just, what in the world are you talking about? It has nothing to do with NASCAR. Today, at both Michigan International Speedway big NASCAR Sprint Cup races this year, the pace car was the Ford Fusion Energy plug-in. And actually, NASCAR, I believe, was the first major motorsport. We ran at Richmond in April of last year the full EV Ford Focus when that car launched. It wasn't a ceremonial pace car. It had to actually pass muster to actually be a pace car, and it paced our racing in Richmond. So the concept, the concept of us maybe doing short track or other kinds of racing with plug-in vehicles, with electric cars, where the motors themselves are actually ideally suited, where you need immediate max torque and then regenerative braking and benefiting from all of that, that's here as an opportunity, and it's something I'm comfortable actually sharing that thought process with everyone here, as opposed to a few years ago where we would have thought, wow, that's quite a stretch. So I think we're right there in terms of what you're getting.
So Mike, just to get clarity on this, I'm curious about this. So if I wanted to enter my super souped up Prius in a NASCAR race, or a souped up whatever Chevy in a NASCAR race that is a hybrid, am I allowed to do that under the rules?
Today?
Yeah, it's an incredibly naive question, I know, but I mean, if in theory you can get this incredible torque from the battery part, and I realize you couldn't have a pure electric unless someone invents some way to charge up you need one hell of a charger to charge a Tesla in what is it, how they do these pit stops in like 30 seconds or less, right?
More ideally in the 13 seconds.
In the 13-second range. So that's not happening. I'm not charging my Tesla from all the way back up in 13 seconds.
No, but you could, well, with the superchargers, you can do it in 10 minutes or so.
Right, but 13 seconds, 10 minutes. I'm not winning any Indy 500 with that.
Well, since you bring it up, though, this raises a very cool point, which is in the history of our sport, where it came from in its roots, and even now in some of our race events, like our All-Star race or a couple of the other events that we hold, there's this approach called segment racing, which is exactly what we're talking about. So bringing the cars into pit road and having them sit for 5 or 10 minutes, we've been doing that for 60 years, depending on the event format. And you can build excitement in that. You make segments of different lengths. What if the last segment is 3 laps, right? And so taking a break, almost like a period break in a hockey game or a halftime in a football game, we've been doing that. And so that's actually...
But I can't win the whole race, right?
I'm sorry?
These are incredibly naive NASCAR questions, but I can't possibly win the whole race if I'm taking 10-minute breaks. I can win a segment of the race, but not the whole thing.
But the way that the segments are approached is if you win a segment, then you get priority in the next segment, and win the whole race based on the rules going through. But just to directly answer your original question, our current core product is still our core product. It's running on 15% American ethanol and Sunoco Green E15. We have The thing about NASCAR is that it's a fully standardized competition box within each series. So having something exotic slide in that's different from everything else,
Right.
that's not on the table. And that would result in a racing product that our core fans wouldn't resonate to, because if you've got things really different from one another, then you won't have tight pack racing,
Sure.
side-by-side contact racing. However, could we develop product with plugins where those plugins are within a rule box that makes them very competitive with one another and actually has a lot of NASCAR product facets to it? Yeah, yeah. It's going to take a lot of thought and work.
Yeah.
But our manufacturer partners, Chevy, Toyota, and Ford, are going that direction to meet CAFE standards anyway. So this is an amazing opportunity moment now where the direction of car efficiency and alternative drivetrains and fuels and power, it's there to be leveraged.
It just strikes me from a marketing perspective that one of the interesting things we've seen happen with electric vehicles is that, yes, people are making electric vehicles. They've been ramping up the production in the last several years. But the thing that seems to be finally getting people's real excitement and attention is this Tesla, because it's no longer the view that like your electric car is this sort of potentially dorky little vehicle. It's this super hot rod, amazing car that you get to drive. And that's getting a lot of people's attention. It's getting a lot of excitement, and it's rebranding the concept of an electric vehicle. And I just, if you're making these, you have this brand power with NASCAR. If you can use that same kind of brand power with electric vehicles and with other newfangled technology, that seems like an interesting opportunity. But I want to bring Ruth back in the conversation, though, because we've been going on and on and on about cool cars and things like that that are at least interesting to me. But on the power generation side, though, again, I just wanted a little more clarity. So 3 megawatts of power is being used to what? Broadcast television networks, to what? What other kinds of things go on at a race that you need that much electricity for?
Well, to do all those things, you basically have a pretty big data center on there, right? So that's one aspect, right? In addition to the broadcasting capability.
So these are big trucks that are being,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'm not actually sure exactly how the data center is set up. Is it an EcoPod or, perhaps not yet.
And it's got it's diesel generated power, right?
Primarily.
Primarily,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so, of course, I have to ask, any thoughts of making that a mobile photovoltaic system or some other way of generating that power? Certainly, you use the analogy of the military. Increasingly, we're seeing forward bases around the world that are showing up and have mobile PV systems and are using those other kinds of technologies. That's something that you guys are considering as well.
Oh, absolutely. And where control and management and sensors that HP brings meets, essentially our sort of core mission of beyond Six Sigma reliability and making sure the broadcast stays up. And then the other area of implementation we're doing a lot of brainstorming on is our garage area, which is an incredibly visible place where vehicles like this number 39 American Ethanol truck pull in and they get worked on for a couple of days before they race. We're working on opportunities in there to consolidate the power generation and power offering and manage it in a very smart way. And it's something that, if photovoltaics get to the point of efficiency and reliability at footprint that can be moved and set up, that can be applied to specific uses, like UPS has already taken their trackside services shipping operation that's actually at the track, because we have a workforce that literally is itinerant. I mean, they're out on the road 38 weeks a year, and you got to ship stuff.
So you have a FedEx office that travels
UPS.
with you.
UPS, the official shipper of NASCAR.
Sorry,
and
wrong branding.
they've actually taken that operation off the grid and about 80% off of generators with solar power. So that's one small example of that being done. For these more power intensive, a broadcast compound, that's, you're talking about, very power hungry trailers full of stuff that's used to broadcast and show the talent on the stage. Sure. And all of that. Then you're talking about, biofuels like biodiesel or cellulose, which Growth Energy is a leader in, or hydrogen. For example, we're going to be deploying fuel cell generators to power a bunch of our cameras starting early next year. Really, it's almost like our broadcast compound by itself is a microcosm or a microenvironment that could literally mirror or reflect what Israel is trying to work toward. Where you've got this sort of tightly sort of bounded thing that needs to be powered and have energy from a diversity of sources and has that opportunity. That's one little example that kind of can be reflected on a national level.
Yeah, that was my next, I guess, well, go ahead, Elliot. I was going to
Well,
ask
we
that
were just
question.
wondering over here, you know, outside of the United States, I suppose it's a bit like the World Series baseball. It's not the world, it's the US. Plus, I think, you know, you occasionally have some visiting teams. But in terms of motor racing, a lot of people around the world, they think Formula One. Now, I know it's not quite the same. They're not cars that you might not completely think that was a bit weird if you saw one on the road. But is Formula One doing anything to try to make itself greener? Do you know how it compares in terms of the energy it kind of is using? And I will just mention one thought from Uri, who's watching, whose question is, do we need this kind of sport, such a waste of energy? But I'll leave you to answer that afterwards. But in terms of Formula One versus NASCAR, I mean, are they trying to do something? Are they planting lots of trees somewhere to kind of carbon offset? What are they doing?
Well, to go through the sort of deep specifics of their platform, you know, that's something I would definitely leave to them. But it's definitely been the case that they've had, you know, a really solid sort of diversity of efforts in the sport, whether it was on the race car. You know, they were among the first to actually try to implement regenerative braking, for example, you know, in a super high performance race car. But they've definitely been a solid participant in sort of the green movement or the green effort globally.
They don't use ethanol in their cars, presumably, do they?
Currently, I mean, it's.
I appreciate it's not your sport, so if it's fine if you don't.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference in the model too, where with us, it's Sunoco Green E15, every drop, every mile, every race team, every car, you know, reflected by the green ring around the fuel port, even on all of the cars. Other motorsports, like Formula One, you can have diversity of fuel choice and supply. So it's a different deal. You know, in our case, what we do in competition is completely standardized. Every race team, every car must comply in exactly the same way. You know, we're just a little different that way.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's every team that has E15, or it's just your team that it's just one team?
Oh no, every team.
Every NASCAR team.
Every team. 5 million miles, that's accumulated across every single race team driver across the board in Camping World Truck Series, Nationwide Series, and Spring Cup Series.
And so the other half of that question that the viewer asked was about just the general use of energy overall of the sport. So are we going to see the Indy 499 instead of the Indy 500 sometime soon in the name of improving energy efficiency?
Well, the Indianapolis 500 that's a different league, and it's they actually run. You know, there's one of the biggest days in motorsports. You know, basically kicks off the summer with Memorial Day, and on that day, you know, the world wakes up to a Formula One race in the U.S. anyway. It's at 5 in the morning or something like that. Then in the afternoon, you've got the Indianapolis 500, and then NASCAR, we run the Coca-Cola 600 that night in Charlotte. So that's a heck of a big day where it all happens on the same day. As far as shortening races for green impact, you know, again, it kind of gets to, if you're shortening a race by 10 laps, I mean, we're only talking about 450,000 gallons in the first place, so the marginal impact to the planet isn't that much.
I'm asking tongue in cheek. I'm just wondering if there's some symbolic effort towards efficiency that perhaps can be a gesture that could be made. And it's certainly not to shorten the race. I get that there are literally decades of records that are set on a 500-mile race.
And it's about, you know, where you're talking about performance green, then it's in the context of the full product experience. Can we make that greener and not compromise that experience? That's really where the focus is.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for answering every dumb question ever asked about NASCAR from myself and by Elliot as well, I might add.
We ask our fair share of dumb questions.
Thanks very much. It was a great panel.
Thanks, Rick.